Are you stuck obsessing over someone? Replaying every moment in your head like a broken record? What if I told you the secret to breaking free lies in the shadows you've been avoiding? If you've ever found yourself losing sleep over someone, whether it's an ex, a crush, or even a friend who ghosted you, then you know how exhausting it can be. Your brain feels like it's on a hamster wheel, running in circles, and no matter how hard you try, you just can't seem to let go. But here's the thing. What if the key to stopping this? Obsession isn't about forgetting them, but about facing something much deeper within yourself. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use shadow work, a powerful tool that dives into the hidden parts of your mind, to finally break free from this cycle. And trust me, by the end, you'll have a step-by-step plan to take back control of your thoughts and emotions. But here's the catch. Are you brave enough to face the parts of yourself you've been running from? Stick around to find out. Sure, what is shadow work anyway? Let's start with the basics. Shadow work isn't some mystical woo-woo concept. It's actually grounded in psychology. And it's all about shining a light on the parts of yourself you've shoved into the dark. Think of it like cleaning out your mental closet. You know how you stuff old clothes, broken gadgets, and random junk into the back of your closet, hoping you'll never have to deal with it? That's exactly what we do with our emotions, fears, and insecurities. We hide them away, pretending they don't exist. But here's the kicker. Just because you can't see them doesn't mean they're not running the show. The term shadow comes from a famous psychologist named Carl Jung. He believed that everyone has a shadow, a part of themselves they don't want to admit exists. It's the stuff you're ashamed of, the fears you don't talk about, the anger you bury, or even the parts of yourself you think are unlovable. And guess what? When you obsess over someone, it's often your shadow pulling the strings behind the scenes. So, how does this connect to obsessing over someone? Well, when you can't stop thinking about a person, it's not always about them. Sure, they might have triggered something, but the real issue is usually tied to something unresolved inside you. Shadow work helps you dig into that something and figure out what's really going on. Why do we obsess over people in the first place? Before we dive into how shadow work can help, let's talk about why this obsession happens. Have you ever noticed how your brain latches onto someone like a dog with a bone? It's not random, there's actually science behind it. First, there's the chemical side of things. When you're infatuated with someone, your brain releases dopamine, which is the feel-good chemical. It's the same stuff that gets released when you eat chocolate or win a game. So in a way, thinking about this person becomes addictive, because your brain is chasing that dopamine hit. But here's the problem. When they're not in your life anymore, or if they never return your feelings, your brain keeps trying to solve the puzzle, hoping for another hit. That's why you replay conversations. Imagine what-if scenarios, or stalk their social media. But it's not just chemicals. There's a deeper emotional layer too. Obsessing over someone often happens because they're mirroring something you feel is missing in yourself. For example, maybe they seem confident, and deep down you feel insecure. Or maybe they rejected you and now your brain is screaming, "What's wrong with me?" These feelings aren't new. They're tied to old wounds, fears and beliefs you've been carrying around, sometimes since childhood. And that's where shadow work comes in. It helps you uncover those hidden wounds so you can heal them, instead of letting them control your thoughts. Sakrama, how shadow work helps you stop obsessing. Now that you know what shadow work is and why obsession happens, let's get into the juicy part. How shadow work can set you free. Shadow work is like being your own detective. You're going to investigate your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors to figure out what's really driving your obsession. And don't worry, I'm going to walk you through this step by step, so you can start doing this today. Step 1. Identify the trigger. The first thing you need to do is figure out what's triggering your obsession. Triggers are like the match that lights the fire. They're the moments or thoughts that send you spiraling. For example, maybe you saw a picture of them with someone else on Instagram, and now you're convinced they're happier without you. Or maybe you keep replaying a conversation where they said something that hurt you. Here's what you do. Grab a notebook or your phone and write down exactly what happened the last time you started obsessing. Be specific. What did you see, hear, or think? What emotions came up? For example, you might write, "I saw my ex post a story with a new person, and I felt jealous and worthless." This step is important because it helps you see the pattern. Obsession isn't random, it's always tied to a trigger. And once you know your triggers, you can start to take back control. Step 2, dig into the shadow. Now comes the fun part. Well, fun if you like playing detective anyway. This is where you start asking yourself the hard questions. The goal here is to figure out what your obsession is really about. Spoiler alert, it's probably not about the other person. Here's a story to help explain this. A few years ago, I had a friend, let's call her Sarah, who couldn't stop obsessing over a guy she dated for like 2 months. This guy broke things off and Sarah was a mess. She kept saying things like he was perfect for me, and I'll never find someone like him again. But here's the thing. When we started digging into it, Sarah realized her obsession wasn't really about the guy. It was about her fear of being alone. See, Sarah grew up in a family where being single was seen as a failure. So when this guy left, it triggered a deep fear that she wasn't good enough to be loved. That's what shadow work does. It helps you uncover the real issue. So how do you do this? Start by asking yourself these questions. What am I afraid of losing by letting go of this person? What does this person represent to me? For example, do they represent security, validation, or love? What feelings come up when I think about them? And where have I felt those feelings before? Write down your answers and don't hold back. Be honest, even if it feels uncomfortable. For example, you might realize that your obsession with your ex is tied to a fear of rejection, and that fear started when you were a kid and felt ignored by your parents. Or maybe you're obsessed with a crush because they make you feel seen, and deep down you don't feel worthy of attention. Step 3. Face the shadow. Okay, so you've identified your triggers and dug into the deeper issues. Now comes the part that takes guts, facing your shadow. This means looking at the parts of yourself you've been avoiding, the insecurities, the fears, the shame, and accepting them. Here's the thing. Your shadow isn't your enemy. It's just a part of you that's been hurt and needs healing. But as long as you keep running from it, it's going to keep showing up in sneaky ways, like obsessing over someone. One powerful way to face your shadow is through journaling. Here's an exercise you can try. Write a letter to your shadow. Sounds weird, right? But stick with me. In this letter, talk to the part of yourself you've been hiding. For example, if you realized your obsession is tied to a fear of rejection, you might write, "Dear fear of rejection, I see you. I know you're trying to protect me from getting hurt, but I don't need you to control me anymore. I'm strong enough to handle this." This exercise might feel silly at first, but it's incredibly powerful. It helps you take the power away from your shadow and start healing. Step 4. Reframe the story. Once you've faced your shadow, it's time to change the story you've been telling yourself. See, obsession often happens because we create a narrative in our heads. For example, you might be telling yourself, "If I can't have this person, I'll never be happy." Or "If they don't love me, I'm unlovable." These stories aren't facts, they're just thoughts. And the good news is you can change them. Here's how. Take the story you've been telling yourself and flip it on its head. For example, if your story is, "I'll never be happy without them," reframe it to, "I can create my own happiness with or without them." This step takes practice, but it's worth it. Studies show that reframing negative thoughts can actually rewire your brain over time. It's called cognitive restructuring, and it's a technique used in therapy to help people break free from harmful thought patterns. Step 5. Take action. Here's where the rubber meets the road. Shadow work isn't just about thinking, it's about doing. You need to take action to reinforce the changes you're making. For example, if you realized your obsession is tied to a need for validation, start finding ways to validate yourself. Maybe that means starting a new hobby, setting a personal goal, or even just writing down 3 things you like about yourself every day. Another action step is to set boundaries. If you're obsessing over someone, chances are you're giving them way too much mental real estate. So, take practical steps to limit their influence. For example, mute them on social media, stop checking their profiles, and redirect your energy to something that makes you feel good. Step 6. Practice self-compassion. Finally, be kind to yourself. Shadow work can bring up a lot of heavy emotions, and it's easy to feel overwhelmed. But remember, you're not broken and you're not alone. Everyone has a shadow, and everyone struggles with obsession at some point. One way to practice self-compassion is to talk to yourself like you'd talk to a friend. If your best friend was obsessing over someone, you wouldn't say, "Wow, you're such a loser, get over it." You'd say, hey, I know this is hard, but you're strong, and you'll get through this. So give yourself that same kindness. A real-life example. Let me share a quick story to show you how this works in real life. I once worked with a guy, let's call him Mike, who couldn't stop obsessing over his ex-girlfriend. They'd broken up 6 months earlier, but Mike was still checking her Instagram every day, replaying their fights in his head, and convincing himself he'd never find love again. When we started doing shadow work, Mike realized his obsession wasn't really about his ex. It was about his fear of failure. See, Mike grew up with parents who were super critical, and he'd internalized the belief that if a relationship ended, it meant he was a failure. So when his ex left, it triggered that old wound. Through shadow work, Mike was able to face that fear, reframe his story, and take action. He started journaling, set boundaries like blocking his ex on social media, and even joined a hiking group to meet new people. Within a few months, he wasn't just over his ex. He felt more confident and in control of his life than ever before. Introduce a problem challenge. Now here's the challenge. Shadow work isn't a quick fix. It's not like popping a pill or watching a motivational video and feeling better instantly. It takes time, effort, and a willingness to get uncomfortable. And let's be real. Most people would rather scroll through TikTok than sit down and face their deepest fears. So, the question is, are you willing to do the work even when it's hard? Because if you're not, you might stay stuck in this cycle of obsession for months or even years. Exploration. Let's explore what happens if you don't do shadow work. Imagine this. It's a year from now, and you're still obsessing over the same person. You're still losing sleep, still feeling anxious, still comparing yourself to everyone else. Meanwhile, they've moved on and you're stuck in the past. Sounds miserable, right? But now imagine the opposite. Imagine a year from now, you've done the shadow work. You've faced your fears, healed your wounds, and let go of the obsession. You wake up feeling light, confident, and excited about your life. You're no longer chasing validation from someone else, because you've found it within yourself. That's the power of shadow work. Here's a stat to drive this home. According to a 2021 study published in the Journal of Clinical Psychology, people who engage in self-reflection, practices like shadow work, are 30% more likely to overcome emotional distress and build healthier relationships. So this isn't just some feel-good advice, it's backed by science. Key moment. Here's the turning point. The moment you decide to stop running from your shadow is the moment you take back your power. Think about it. Every time you obsess over someone, you're giving them control over your thoughts, your emotions, your life. But when you do shadow work, you flip the script. You become the one in charge. And let me tell you, there's nothing more empowering than realizing you don't need someone else to feel whole. Conclusion. So let's recap. If you're obsessing over someone, it's not just about them. It's about the shadows you've been avoiding. Shadow work is the key to breaking free, and it starts with identifying your triggers, digging into the deeper issues, facing your fears, reframing your story, taking action, and being kind to yourself. It's not easy, but it's worth it. Because at the end of the day, the goal isn't just to stop obsessing over someone, it's to build a life where you feel so full and complete that no one else can shake you.